Welcome to my channel, USA Battle Zone. Today, I want to share with you a story that will not only shock you, but will touch your heart and remind you that heroes don't always wear uniforms in the open. Sometimes, they walk among us quietly, scarred, unnoticed, and often disrespected, until the truth shines through. It began on a transcontinental flight from Los Angeles to New York. Passengers shuffled into the narrow jet bridge, carrying backpacks, rolling suitcases, and coffees they weren't supposed to bring on board. There was the usual chatter, the sighs, the tapping shoes of impatient travelers who just wanted to get settled. Among them was a woman in her late 30s. She walked with a certain stiffness, not from arrogance but from a body that had been through battles most couldn't imagine. Her clothes were plain: dark jeans, a loose sweater, boots worn from years of service. Her hair, tied back simply, framed a face that carried both beauty and weight, the beauty of resilience and the weight of memories. She held her boarding pass tightly. Seat 3A, first class. But when she stepped into the first-class cabin, sliding her carry-on above her seat, she could feel the stares. The businessmen in suits, the woman in pearls, the young influencer recording herself for her followers, they all gave her that subtle, sharp look. The look that said, "You don't belong here." She lowered herself into the leather seat, trying to shrink in the space, when a flight attendant approached with a stiff smile. "Ma'am," the attendant said softly, "this section is reserved for first-class passengers." The woman frowned slightly and handed over her ticket. The attendant glanced at it, then at her, then back at the boarding pass again. "I see. Well, I'll just double-check this with the gate. Would you mind waiting in economy until we sort this out?" Her voice was polite, but her tone carried something else. Doubt, disbelief, judgment. The woman hesitated. She had paid for this ticket. She had earned a moment of rest. But she also wasn't one to make a scene. She gathered her bag again, quietly, and walked back through the curtain to coach. A few first-class passengers smirked. A man whispered to his wife, probably upgraded herself with points. Figures. She sat in a cramped middle seat in row 23. She stared ahead, her breathing calm but her eyes burned. As the plane continued boarding, the captain walked down the aisle from the cockpit to stretch his legs. A seasoned pilot, tall, silver hair, the kind of man who carried respect simply by the way he stood. His eyes scanned the cabin casually. And then he saw her. For a moment, time froze. Because as she leaned forward to adjust her bag, the collar of her sweater slipped, revealing part of her upper back. Just for a second, but it was enough. Enough for him to see the unmistakable ink, the black, trident-shaped symbol etched into her skin. A Navy SEAL tattoo, not just any design. It was the authentic mark, the one earned through the most grueling training in the world. And he knew, because once, many years ago, he had trained with them before taking his path into aviation. He knew what that tattoo cost. The blood, the bone-deep pain, the sacrifices. The captain stopped in his tracks. His chest tightened. He remembered brothers he had lost, missions he had heard about but would never speak of. And here she was, sitting cramped in the back of economy, disrespected, dismissed. He turned sharply and headed straight to the flight attendant at the front. His voice was low, but firm. "Why is 3A empty?" The attendant blinked. "Oh, there was a mix-up. A passenger sitting there didn't seem, well, I wasn't sure her ticket was valid, Captain." The captain's eyes narrowed. "Not valid. Are you? Didn't think she looked like she belonged." The attendant flushed. I was just trying to fix it," the captain snapped. Moments later, the attendant walked back to row 23, her face pale, and said softly, "Ma'am, my apologies. There's been a mistake. Please, come with me." The woman didn't move at first. She looked at the attendant, then at the captain who now stood waiting near the curtain. His eyes met hers, and in them she saw recognition. Respect. Not pity, not judgment. Respect. She stood slowly, gathered her bag again, and followed. The cabin was silent now, curious eyes tracking her every step. She returned to seat 3A, lowered herself back into the plush leather, and stared out the window. The captain lingered. He leaned close, his voice just above a whisper. "I saw your ink, SEAL." Her jaw tightened. She didn't answer at first. Then, with a voice steady but quiet, she said, "Class 242. The captain's breath caught. I knew a man from that class. Ramirez. Her eyes softened with memory. Yeah, he didn't make it back. The captain placed a hand gently on the headrest of her seat. His voice was thick. Neither did my brother. Same unit. Same sand. I just want to say, welcome home. For the first time on that flight, the woman's hardened face cracked. Her eyes glistened, but she blinked the tears back quickly. She simply nodded. Word spread quietly among the crew. The whispers grew louder among the passengers. Suddenly, those who had smirked, those who had judged her, sat in uncomfortable silence. Some looked down at their hands. Some shifted uneasily in their seats. And then, something remarkable happened. The young influencer in pearls, who had earlier rolled her eyes, tapped the woman on the arm gently. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice trembling. I didn't know. "Thank you for your service." The businessman followed. "I lost my cousin in Afghanistan," he said awkwardly, almost ashamed. "I shouldn't have judged." "Thank you." Row after row, passengers leaned forward, offering quiet words. Not all, but enough. Enough to fill the cabin with a heavy, emotional air. The woman didn't bask in it. She didn't smile. She simply nodded, acknowledging them, carrying their gratitude like another weight on her shoulders. Because she wasn't there for praise. She never was. As the plane soared eastward, she finally let herself breathe. She closed her eyes, the hum of the engines surrounding her, and thought of her teammates. The ones who didn't come home. The ones whose names would never be on tickets, whose faces would never be in first class, or coach, or anywhere else again. And she whispered, so faintly only she could hear, "This seat isn't for me. It's for you." The captain, from the cockpit, carried her story with him as well. And when the plane touched down in New York, and the passengers began to disembark, something unusual happened. No one rushed to push ahead. No one tried to crowd the aisle. Instead, they stood back. They waited. The woman rose, adjusted her sweater, and picked up her bag. She walked down the aisle slowly, with every passenger watching. And as she passed, one by one, they nodded. Some whispered, "Thank you." Some placed their hand over their heart. Some simply bowed their heads. By the time she stepped off the plane, her eyes burned again. Not from disrespect this time, but from something else. Something she hadn't felt in years. Recognition. Because for once, people saw her not as someone who didn't belong, but as someone who had given everything to protect them. And though she would fade back into her quiet life, though she would walk again in plain clothes, unnoticed, she carried that moment with her. A reminder that sacrifice is never truly invisible. That respect, though often delayed, can still arrive. So remember this. The next time you see someone who doesn't look like they belong, think twice. Because you never know the battles they've fought. You never know the scars they carry under their skin. And you never know if the person in front of you has given everything so that you can sit where you are, safe, free, and alive. This was more than just a flight. This was a reminder of what true heroism looks like. Quiet, unseen, unapologetic. Thank you for watching this story here on USA Battle Zone. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of the respect our heroes deserve, then please, like, comment, and subscribe. Share this story with others so that their sacrifices are never forgotten. Because heroes are all around us. Sometimes, sitting in first class. Sometimes, forced into the back. But always, always carrying the weight of freedom on their shoulders.